Hello everybody, hope you did okay. Now, the Nike Vaporfly 4% here in the ice blue colour. This was the original Vaporfly 4%, I think. It came out in 2017. I managed to get a hold of a pair a year later, and I used it for a park run as my first outing. I did 1911. Anyway, I think you could argue, I think this shoe would sort of started off the super shoe trend in little modern years, and it forced World Athletics to come up with a approved shoe list a few years later. Now, that site has recently had a bit of a revamp, so I thought we would take a look. So you can now see pictures of all the different shoes, and you can see which ones are coming up and see if we like our fancy of any of these new ones. Before we do that, let's have a quick look at the 4% here. I did about 250 miles in this pair. It's actually only UK 12 rather than 13. I must have been able to squeeze my feet into them a bit more easily back in the day. But yeah, I haven't worn it for a while, but it's not looking too bad, is it? I mean, it's amazing how sort of narrow it looks there across the middle, even though it's a size less than I normally take. But yeah, certainly a shoe that sort of was a real game changer the first time I wore it. Okay, so if we go to the World Athletics site, worldathletics.org, first thing we notice when you hit the World Athletics site, we've got the news of this Netflix documentary Sprint starting on 2nd of July, I think, featuring obviously all the sprinters. So I've watched the golf one, it's been very good, and I've watched the David Beckham one, things like that. So yeah, looking forward to that for sure. Although perhaps I'm hoping perhaps for a middle distance one at some point, especially with Josh Kerr against Ingebrigtsen at the moment. Anyway, if we go on to competitions and then rules and regulations and then technical information and then athletic shoes, you can see there's a new subsite being created for shoes, searchcheck.worldathletics.org. So it takes us to a fairly simple front end, so we can actually just type in the name of the shoe. Let's look for Vaporfly, and there's the Vaporfly 4% that I was just looking at, and there's one looking a bit newer than my pair, isn't it? And it sort of tells you that it's illegal for road races, cross-country races, and mountain and trail races. I'm not quite sure who'd be using it for the latter two. And it's quite an old one now, obviously, so I think the dates there are a bit nominal. If we look at more recently, we can see the Vaporfly 1, 2, and 3. So there's the third one, for instance. That's the original Proto white colour. And again, it shows that it's available for road races. But I think the key thing there is that you can actually now have a look at it and a picture of it. So if you kind of forget how a shoe was, Alphafly 3, and then there's the new one. There's the original one. That's the same colourway as I've got, actually. And you also go to a full list. Let's have a bit of perusal, see what we can see. Now, the interesting thing with this is the development shoes, because they're the ones that haven't been released yet. There's the rules that you can have a shoe for development for a year. The only thing is you can't use it in the World Athletics Championships or the Olympic Games. So it has to be a shoe that basically, if they want to use it in them, it's got to be made available for retail. So let's have a look at here on the Adidas ones. I don't think there's really anything greatly of interest here. I think they're all spikes here. So Adizero Finesse 24 looks a bit of an interesting one, but for track, but yeah, not particularly that sort of revolutionary for the road. We've got a Javelin spike there. Adizero Prime SP3 strung. Interestingly, got a strung upper then on a spike. The Prime X2 strung was a bit disappointing, so hopefully that will be a bit better for them. But yeah, not really anything of major interest there for Adidas. But what you can see is have a look at some of these other ones. Adidas Zero Takumi Ren. There was a time when the Ren and the Sen fitted together. I kind of can't remember which way around it was. I think the Ren was a slightly more sort of like beefed up version, but it's very relative. They were very minimalist shoes. And here's the Takumi Ren 3. They decided for some reason to get rid of them. So the oldest Sen one we've got here is the Sen 5, and you can see how minimal that is. I mean, that was in the days of Boost, I think. But look at that front there. There's hardly anything there at all, is it? Very low to the ground feeling. You would think that you couldn't really wear that at all these days. Up to the latest Sen 10 here. And it shows you the different things you can use it for. There's a new rule coming out soon. I think that you've got to be 20 mils to use it for 800 meters, but that new rule is not coming in until next year, I think. So I think most of the spikes available at the moment can use for both. Let's see what else we can see here. Is there anything from ASICS of interest? We've got the Hyperspeed 4, which I've started to see a few reviews out for. You see it's available for sale from 1st of June, so basically it's coming onto the market now. That's why all the reviews have been there, and not really a shoe that particularly interests me. I'm a bit annoyed with ASICS really, because they don't really do their top shoes for me. But having said that, let's have a look down here. Metaspeed RW, that's actually come out quite recently, isn't it? So maybe that's the next evolution of it. It looks very similar to what it currently is. If they do a UK 13 in it, so much the better. Let's have a look at a couple of these ones. SP2 Type A, looks like another sprint spike. Very aggressive, that one. And then the other one, the Type B, looks a bit more beefed up. Like, got like a huge bulge there where you sort of land, wouldn't it? And then it must be a sprint spike because there's virtually nothing at the back. But they sort of like bounding down the track, I'd imagine, that one. Still got the artist from Atreo. Never really sort of developed them much. Brooks is interesting here. So we've got the Hyperion Elite 4. I think this Elite 4 here must have been an earlier version of it because it looks actually identical to the actual released Hyperion Elite 4. But of more interest, we've got two variants of the Hyperion Elite 5, which obviously hasn't been released yet. And let's have a look at this one. That is definitely looking more interesting. You've got a bit of a sort of a knit upper, haven't you? A bit like the Nike ones, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sort of eyelet chains there. And look at that, that sort of curves into the back. But an interesting sort of midsole here, sort of really sort of cut away. So, yeah, what will this bring? Will this sort of bring the Hyperion Elite into the mainstream? I mean, Josh Kerr ran a very good half marathon in it. I saw him do a track session when he was knocking out sort of well under sub 4 pace on reps. The B version here looks to be identical. The fact it's just got difference. It's just got a bit more sort of like actual lettering on it. So it looks like a bit more of an advanced prototype. But you still got like a DNA stuff here. So it still doesn't look like P, but does it? So yeah, reserve judgment on this one. But another one that they don't so far have done in the UK 13. So chances are I probably want me to try it anyway. So yeah, another one that sort of look on from afar. But interesting to see an actual new version of a shoe here for sure. Nordlight Tempo from Craft, which looks a bit of a monstrosity, doesn't it? I mean, that looks a massive amount of sponge there. You can't really believe that's a racing shoe. It looks really, really heavy. At least it would be in my size. Maybe that's why it's called Tempo. But yeah, it just looks like a huge slab of foam there. I'm not quite sure what that's meant to be at all. Decathlon and Kiprun. Is this one that's a variant of... I've never tried a Decathlon shoe. I think it's another brand that don't do a UK 13, so I seem to be out of luck on quite a lot of these ones. This looks a fairly interesting one. It looks a bit like the Hyperion Elite in a way, doesn't it, do you think? In fact, you might argue they might have copied it, but who's to say? Sente, some track spikes there. Diadora, have they got anything of interest here? Gara Carbon. Diadora is sort of like, you know, I always think that it's like well made, but who actually would actually want to buy them to run in? You know, one of those sort of niche products, really. Lungo Carbon. Well, it's actually a sprint spike or some sort of track spike, maybe. Hard to say. Lungo Carbon W. Not quite sure whether that's a middle distance shoe or even a throwing shoe with that Velcro cross there. That's more like commonly seen in cycle shoes, isn't it? I mean, I think that's sort of more commonly seen in throwing shoes, but they wouldn't have spikes there for the throwing shoes, so maybe that is a middle distance spike. Can't really believe that's a sprint spike with all that foam at the back and at the front as well. Not quite sure what athletes are sponsored by Diadora. Seb Coe was for a while, I think, after he left Nike at the end of his career. Erke Hongxing, that must be a Chinese brand. Looks vaguely interesting, but I bet another one that won't come in my size. Looks quite a nice upper though, doesn't it? Yeah, interesting one. Wonder if someone like Ed Budman might get his hands on one of them. Let's see, Hoka, they don't seem to have got much of interest here. I think the PX1 looked like a early version of the CLO X1. Is it this CLO X1? Yeah, looks like just an early prototype of that one, doesn't it? So not really anything from Hoka to grab our attention. Li-Ning Fiodan 4 Elite. Yeah, another sort of Chinese brand. Looks a bit of a high stack at the back there, doesn't it? These shoes kind of look odd when they're sort of like in very plain colour. They look like they're sort of high stack than they actually are. Interesting one, but not sure that really appeals to me. Another one that probably won't come my size though. Lululemon, that's an interesting one. So will someone like Anya Culling be sporting these? Is this a race shoe? You click on that and get smaller. But yeah, it does look like it's a bit more racy. I mean, Fordy gave a Lululemon shoe the terrible review, so maybe this one's a bit better. Mizuno, that was always good for some high stacks. I think it's got some high jump shoes, javelin shoes, long jump shoes. And what's this one here? Some sort of prototype shoe. Blimey, that is ridiculous. That looks absolutely ridiculous. That can't be legal, surely. Well, it must be if it's on the approved list. Look at that stack at the back. Well, sort of. And where they're measuring it, I think they sort of measure it sort of around about there-ish. So I guess there, it's not actually that high stack. And then look at that stack at the front. Blimey. This looks like a sort of a thing that a 70s rock star would wear, wouldn't it? Quite interesting. But again, another one I haven't been able to try so far. I haven't ever seen my size in the Mizuno. So, but yeah, that one's certainly of interest for sure. Wave Dual Neo SO1. I'm quite sure what this one is. It looks a bit more minimalist, but it also looks a bit retro, doesn't it? With all this sort of suede here. I'm not sure if this is a serious running shoe or some sort of retro shoe. Doesn't look like a race. I'm not quite sure what that is. I mean, is that? I don't know. It just seems odd. Odd shoe, that one. Oh, this one's actually allegedly on sale already. So yeah, comments down below if you know what exactly that's for. New Balance. Have we got anything from? No, nothing new from New Balance at all. Right, no, Nike is always interesting. 1362. Now and then, is that the? I think that's the Air Zoom Victory. It was the stack at the back and the stack at the front, or is that the Max Fly? I'm never quite sure. Certainly does look very extreme, doesn't it? Maybe that is the Max Fly. Where's the actual Max Fly? Does that look similar to that? Sort of, doesn't it? Air Zoom Victory. Oh, not a very good side-on view of that one. Anyway, what's Dev 15? Oh, Dev 15 is clearly Alpha Phi 3, so that's not very interesting. Dev 19045. Oh, that's clearly a throwing shoe, so not particularly of great interest to us. And the next one, Dev 2293. Looks like the same spike again. Now, is that a Max Fly with that sort of very little sort of heel at the back? It's almost like removed completely. Or was that the Air Zoom Victory? Apologies, I'm sort of a bit vague here as to whether it's the Air Zoom Victory or the Max Fly. So if you've got this huge airbag at the front for sure. I think that's probably the Air Zoom Victory, isn't it? And Dev 04205. That looks like a version of the Dragonfly, doesn't it? I've heard there's a Dragonfly Elite, so maybe this is it. I'm not quite sure what the difference is. I think I've heard that it's been used for steeplechases. So I don't think that the Dragonfly 2 that I've got is going to be anything radically different here. It also looks like a minimalist sort of road racing shoe, the Dragonfly. I think that's why it's so popular, really, because it sort of feels quite similar to a road shoe when you put it on. Any road shoes? No, no sign of any Streetfly 2s or anything like that. It's a bit disappointing, isn't it? So what have On got? Cloud Strike LS Dev 1. Oh, that's quite an interesting one. That looks a bit more like a sort of a short distance racer, doesn't it? That looks quite streak. Very high at the back there. Must be a bit of a booty thing. I imagine that's a shoe that won't come my size. It just looks tiny, but I think there actually is a one, Cloud Strike LS, which seems to be already on sale. Has anyone actually seen one of these? I've never seen a review on this one. It looks quite nice, but maybe it's one of these shoes that is very rarely done for the general mainstream. They just do it for the sake of getting it onto their for sale list. It certainly does look like a nice 5K shoe for sure. Got some spikes here. Cloud Boom 4 Dev. I think that's just an early version of Cloud Boom 4, isn't it? Yeah, I think it must be. I'm not sure. Anything great of interest there. Puma. Now, Puma Nitro Elite 3. Now, this looks like a very high stack shoe. It's also like the picture's been sort of squashed, doesn't it? I mean, the proportion there to the length to the back there looks sort of bizarre. It's almost like it's been squashed in. But it's a strange upper there. It looks like you're going to the Panto, doesn't it? A bit like silver on a knit upper. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But that must be coming out soon, I would have thought. Because I've heard rumours of this one. Evo Speed Berserker Nitro Elite. That must be just a dev version of it. Oh, look at that spike. That must be a sprint spike. That looks bizarre, doesn't it? I mean, that really is told it's a sprint spike because it's got absolutely nothing at the back. So yeah, don't think you'd be running too far in one of them for sure. And the Forte Pro Nitro Elite. Oh, that must be their sort of long middle distance version of that because it's definitely got a bit more sponge at the back. That one for sure, isn't it? Anything else of interest for us? A long jump shoe, perhaps. Not much more. So Saucony. So there's interesting ones here. The Endorphin DVP3, which I clicked on that. And that's on sale from the 1st of March 2024. I'm not quite sure what that means. It looks. Is that the Endorphin Pro 4? So let's look at the DVP4. That looks a bit like the Endorphin Elite, doesn't it? I know there's an Endorphin Elite 2, supposedly. But that looks a bit like another Endorphin Elite. But I think the DVP6, again, that looks bizarre, doesn't it? I mean, it's like sort of a 70s rock star shoe. I mean, there's like huge amount of stack in the front, huge amount of stack in the back, or so it looks. Massive heel tab there. And again, it looks like it's totally squashed in, and sort of like a decoupled bit in the middle. So, wow, is that the Endorphin Elite 2? Is that how it's going to look? Or what are these other ones again? That looks like the shoe that's already come out, doesn't it? Just a tame version of the current Endorphin Elite. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Any thoughts down below? Anything else of interest here? Nothing from Skechers. Tracksmith. Now, they've finally come out with a potential race day shoe. It kind of looks a bit like the original Adidas Pro 1, when it's almost like unfinished. They just sort of stuck a slab of foam onto an upper. It does look quite a flat shoe, doesn't it? You can't imagine get up on your toes on this one very well. I also don't like the look of these shoes that don't look like they've got too much sort of flex. What type of striker are these designed for? Because it seems like if you land there or land there, it'd be exactly the same. I always like to have a shoe where I feel like it curves a bit. Maybe it's the days from wearing flats, you just get up on your toes, but this one kind of looks bizarre. Anyway, I'm sure another one that would come my size either, but good to see that they're giving it a go. I'm sure that will be seen in some of these shakeout runs in London, maybe. And finally, we've got Under Armour Velocity Racer 2. Has that come out already? I haven't yet tried an Under Armour shoe in real anger. I did buy one once, and then it was completely the wrong size. So I just sent it back. Couldn't wear it. But yeah, Velocity Racer 2 might be worth investigating. Shakedown Elite. These look like spikes. Elite long distance. There's an awful lot of sponge there. Can't believe that's going to be under 20 mils for the period after when the new rules come in. Elite middle distance 3. Again, another spike looks like. Again, looks bizarre. It looks like it's got more sponge in the front than it's got in the back, although it says MD middle distance. And finally, let's just go to Xtep here. Don't know anything about this brand. I imagine another brand that is not likely to fit my size, being Chinese, I think. Oh, that's quite an interesting one, because again, it looks a bit like the Endorphin Elite in a way, doesn't it? But yeah, quite a nice sort of colourway there. Or maybe one of the Pumas, sort of taking nods from the Endorphin Elite was one of the Pumas. That was sprint spike. If you have more foam there than you do at the back, they don't really expect you to land at the back, do you? Unless you're just sort of walking about. But maybe that's a sprint spike. Bizarre. Anyway, what do you think of any of these ones? They all look some interesting ones. Not really too many revelations, but it's quite interesting that you can click through to the pictures and see what's coming up. I thought it was interesting. So I hope you find this interesting. Like and subscribe, and see you on the next one. Bye. By the way, I've got the Adidas Adizero SL2 in, and also got the Pegasus 41. I've had a bit of a setback though. I seem to have like done my foot in, and then I've got my pelvis is really painful. So I'm actually at the moment finding it quite difficult just to walk about. So I'm not quite sure when I'm going to be able to run again. But I've done a bit of mileage in the SL2. I'm hoping to get a review out of that, at least to sort of what I might call an initial review. Not really sort of a classic shoe tubing, but I think I've got some thoughts on that one, which will be worth sharing. And the Pegasus 41, maybe I get Sue to do an unboxing. It will be very luminous. I've got the Volt colorway one, which I think will match well with all my Volt tops and socks. So yeah, I'll be extremely luminous, I think, when I get back to running, which hopefully won't be too long, because it's the wrong time of year to be resting up June and all these like late nights and that. Anyway, rabbiting on. See you on the next one then. Bye.